Check out what's happening now on Rehab Gaming News. What's going on, retro gaming fans, and welcome to another Rehab Gaming News Report. So today we have some exciting news and information to pass along to you relating to the project named the 64 Mate. If you remember from a previous video release that we did on the N64 Mate, this item is an enclosure device that is specifically designed to house video scaling equipment and other things that goes with the Nintendo 64 console. Stay tuned and we'll get right at it. We have just received our media info packet from the 64 Mate team, and it contains all the information that you need in order to get your hands on the 64 Mate. The 64 Mate project is going to primarily be funded by a Kickstarter campaign. Now, this Kickstarter campaign is set to launch on May 4th of 2020, and it will last all the way through June 4th of 2020. The 64 Mate development team's goal of raising 60,000 Australian dollars is gonna be a steep goal to meet, but this project has generated so much excitement throughout the retro gaming community. I personally don't see them having any problem whatsoever meeting that 60,000 Australian dollar goal and possibly blowing the roof right off of that puppy. So if you are interested in trying to fund this Kickstarter campaign and you want to pledge for one of these, your pledge amount is going to be 77 Australian dollars per enclosure, and it looks like that they anticipate to be able to deliver these enclosures by September or October of 2020 for each individual person that has pledged that amount. Now, however, there is a very important caveat that was released to us in our media package that we got from the 64 Mate team, and that is, though it was displayed in the marketing images throughout all of the information releases for the 64 Mate project, unfortunately, the minimum funding required to meet their goal does not, I repeat, does not include the top plate for that housing. I know, I can hear some of you now saying, but if I pledge $77, I expect to get that top plate. It came with the top plate in all of the pictures for this project that we've seen so far, but there's a really good reason why, and you have to try and understand the process of trying to manufacture a brand new product and doing it in a professional manner, requiring injection molding processes, and how sometimes when you're trying to get a product to market, not everything is going to work exactly the way that you want it to. Now, Gilly Guide and Shane Battier did offer a good explanation in detail as to why that top plate is not going to ship with the units that are covered under this Kickstarter campaign. Gilly Guide went on to explain that the top plate for this 64 Mate is going to require additional funding for the tooling. Now, it's very optional in the usage, but is displayed in the presentation photos. So what that means is that when you use the injection molding process, they have to machine an entire new set of molds in order to create that top plate. Now, in order to machine those molds and get those molds to production and actually pump out those top plates for the production run, it's going to take a lot more money because of the fact that you're ultimately producing two separate pieces that are actually put together to make one single item. To make a long story short, each individual piece of the N64 Mate that is one solid piece of plastic must be molded out of one set of molds. So if there is a piece that would go onto the 64 Mate that is separate, it would require tooling for a set of individual molds for each part. Now, if they're able to raise more than 60,000 Aussie dollars through their Kickstarter campaign, they may be able to stretch out some of that funding in order to add some other features that may be announced at a later date. There are two different editions of the 64 Mate that will be offered through the Kickstarter campaign. The first is going to be the standard Enclosure edition. This Enclosure edition is going to have a transparent front panel, internal storage space to suit any devices such as video upscalers and capture cards. The front panel can accommodate custom artwork and a machined base plate that has perforations and holes for ventilation and mounting hardware inside of the enclosure. The second edition being offered is the 64 Mate Cart Caddy edition. This set is going to include a N64 cart caddy for the inside of your 64 Mate with an open front window, and the internal cart holder will feature slots to accommodate up to 8 individual N64 game carts. And the base is also going to be machined with perforated metal and slot returns for ventilation for the cartridge holder in place, and there's still going to be storage in behind that cartridge holder where you can even fit a RetroTink or some other smaller type of devices. So all of this got started by a couple of guys by the name of Gillyguide and Shane Battier. On November 28th in 2018, Shane approached Gillyguide with a proposition to help him out with advertising and marketing an open source scan converter enclosure for the Nintendo 64 console as a side project. Gillyguide realized that there are so many different problems with the N64 upscaling to a modern TV, and that the solutions out there on the market were either one, really hard to get a hold of, or two, prohibitively expensive. So of course, because of these factors, these two gentlemen thought that such a device as the 64 Mate would be a great option for others out there who want to try and build their own upscaler system to suit their needs without breaking the bank. And now that they had an idea for an item, they needed to come up with the name. So apparently, Gillyguide and Shane were having a phone conversation about this very project and trying to pick out a name when Gillyguide instinctively blurted out in a horrible Aussie accent, "64 Mate," and thus the name of the 64 Mate came to be. Now that they had both a name and the general idea of what they wanted to accomplish with this project, they decided to do a couple of test runs and use 3D printing technology in order to make a couple of prototypes to see if that would be a viable solution for production. But unfortunately, they soon realized that there are too many limitations with 3D printing technology, and that in order to get the proper fit and finish that they wanted to achieve, they decided, even though it was going to cost more money, it was going to be worth it in the end to use the injection molding process. Naturally, with any process of developing a product, there were quite a few different iterations of prototypes that were manufactured before they finally settled on a design that they were happy with and that they thought would resonate well with the retro gaming community who are fans of the N64 console. And so naturally, as developers like to do, they wanted to get input from the community to see if this was going to be a viable project, number one, and two, to see how interested the community as a whole would be in such a device like the 64 Mate. As their idea circulated through the community, they got numerous comments regarding how excited the community members would be to have such a thing on the market that they can use to suit their specific needs, and it seemed like the possibilities were endless and that this device can serve so many different purposes without changing the base infrastructure of it. It would be a win-win for everyone as a whole. Now that over a year has passed, they have been able to fine tune everything and get to the point where they can actually produce a working product for the market. As with any startup venture, Gilly Guide and Shane needed to find a creative way to try and come up with the funds in order to pay for the tooling and the pre-work that goes into manufacturing a new device for the market space. And they decided that since it was such a good idea, they felt so confident about the 64 Mate performing well in the market, and since they got so much positive feedback on their ideas and designs, they decided to finance all of the tooling for this initial run themselves. And if the Kickstarter campaign did end up being a flop, they were going to make all of their designs, CAD drawings, and everything related to this project open source, so someone else who has the ability to go out there and produce it for themselves can do so. So this is where all of you come into play. Whoever would be interested in getting their hands on the 64 Mate and trying to support these guys' goal with getting this to the market and it being a viable product, go ahead, go to their Kickstarter campaign, give your pledge, and try and support them as much as you can by sending this information out to whoever you can think of who would be remotely interested, because the more backers that we can get on board for this Kickstarter campaign, the more apt they are to reach their goal, and the more apt that this project could possibly expand to even further beyond anyone's wild imaginations and lead even to a whole new line of accessories for the N64 console. So what I'm going to try and do as soon as the Kickstarter campaign goes live, I will get a hold of that link that will take you directly to the campaign page and post it down in the description below. So if you also want to see this project succeed, go ahead and pledge on the Kickstarter campaign, share all the information you can, and make sure that these guys know that they have 100% of the support from the community that they need, and let's try and get this item into the marketplace and to make it into the hands of consumers worldwide.